In this session, we'll take a look at some of the basic ways the language of holiness occurs in the opening books of the Old Testament, especially Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus. The word holiness occurs first in the Bible in Genesis 2:3 when God calls the Sabbath, the seventh day of creation, holy. That designation indicates that this day is different and distinct from all the other days of the week, and it is to be used differently. Days 1 through 6 are for work, but the seventh day of the week is for rest. The word holy marks the difference. This first usage highlights the basic meaning of the word holy. Something that is holy is different or distinct from other things. It's set apart for special use. In Exodus, the language of holiness first appears in chapter 3, verse 5, when Moses encounters a bush that is burning but not consumed. The voice of God speaks and tells him to take off his sandals because he is standing on holy ground. The point is that this space, this land, is distinct, it's different, and the distinction is acknowledged by the expectation that Moses will remove his sandals. But what makes this land different? What sets it apart? The implication of the text is that this ground is holy because God has manifest his presence there. When God shows up, the place of his presence is holy space. Why is that? The unspoken implication is that it's because God himself is holy. As the Old Testament continues, the theme of God's holiness develops. Over time, the Hebrew people learn that God is holy, and that means he's different. What's he different from? For one, he's different from the created world. The God of the Bible is the uncreated creator. He made all the things, and all things exist for him. All things exist because of him, but he himself is not a created being. He transcends creation. His being, his essence is fundamentally different from anything that has been made. He is distinct. He's holy. This point is made in the commands not to make images of God or to worship idols. In other ancient cultures, like Egypt, for example, all the gods were associated with various aspects of the creation. There was a god associated with the sun, another with the moon, there was a god associated with storms, and another with the river. Even the horizon had a deity associated with it. There are many, many more, but that's enough to make the point. The gods of ancient Near Eastern peoples were associated with various aspects of creation. The creation itself in that way was associated with the divine and considered divine. But those things were created. They weren't powerful. They weren't transcendent. They were not seen as fundamentally distinct from the rest of the created world. Indeed, they're part of the created world. After centuries of living in Egypt, part of the time as slaves, the Hebrew people would have been thoroughly immersed in that worldview in which divine beings, gods, were associated with the created order. That posed a problem because their God, the God who made all things himself and made himself known to Moses at the burning bush, is not part of creation. He transcends creation. He's completely and totally different from anything else. He is fundamentally unlike the gods of the other nations. He's holy. How would the Hebrew people come to know that their God was different from anything that has been made and fundamentally unlike any of the so-called gods they encountered in Egypt? Therein lies the problem. The solution to that problem did not come in the form of a lengthy theological treatise on monotheism, the doctrine or belief that there's only one God. Didn't come in a systematic discussion of holiness. The one God is different. No, the solution came in revelation of God's covenant. Here's what I mean. God demonstrated his superiority over the false gods of Egypt by delivering his people in power from slavery in that land. He brought them to the foot of Mount Sinai, and there he told them that he wanted them to be a holy people and a kingdom of priests. To show them what he meant by holy, he gave them a series of commandments. Some of them will be familiar to you. Those commandments set forth the character that the one God expected of a holy people. They had to be singularly devoted to him, which means they couldn't worship other gods. They couldn't represent him with anything that they've made with their own hands. After all, he's not of this world. They also had to prioritize and respect others. Don't take things that belong to other people. Don't deceive other people. Don't desire things that aren't properly yours. Don't take life. Offer respect to parents and others. The implication is that holy people relate rightly to God and they relate rightly to others. This is one of the reasons that Jesus later said the whole law of the Old Testament is summed up in the commands to love God and to love neighbor. This is why when we speak of holiness today, we often speak of holy love. And along the way, the people began to learn that the character God required of them was meant to teach them about God's own character. That's why we have in Leviticus the statement again and again, "You shall be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy." The character of the people should embody the character of their God. God is true, therefore his people must be true. God does what is right, therefore his people must do what is right. And to the extent that they do, their lives tell the truth about the character of their God. Now, there's an important distinction to be made. Through these opening books of the Bible, the language of holy is attached to inanimate objects like the Sabbath, the tabernacle, the instruments and furnishings that are in the tabernacle. And differently, the language of holiness is attached to the Hebrew people. There's a fundamental difference in the way holiness language is used when it's used of inanimate objects from when it's used of living human beings. With inanimate objects like the tabernacle or the altar in the tabernacle, holiness is a status. The thing is set apart for special use. It doesn't change in and of itself. Its substance stays the same. Holiness refers to the way it's used as an instrument. With people, though, living human beings, there's more to it than that. Holiness is more than status. It's more than a label that describes function. Yes, holiness marks the people of God as distinct and different from other peoples. But the thing that makes them different is their character. When holiness language is used of people, it carries ethical and moral implications. If the people of God are to be holy, it's not simply that their status changes, with no substantive change in the way they live. No, holiness, when attached to the people of God, is filled with ethical and moral significance. The people are not holy in name only. Their very lives, their character, their relationships are to be marked by truth and rightness. Holiness means treating God the way he ought to be treated. Holiness means treating each other the way they ought to be treated. This too sets the people of God apart from other nations. For example, a priest in Egypt would be considered holy because he handled things associated with the gods and the worship of the gods. But in Egypt, holiness didn't come with ethical expectations. It referred to the function of the priest in relation to overseeing the worship of the gods. Holiness quickly came to mean something different for the Israelites. To be holy in Israel meant a substantive change in what you do and how you relate to other people. Again, for the Hebrews, holiness is an ethical category, not simply a status. There's one more thing to clarify before we conclude this session. As the covenant is given, holiness is very much focused on behavior. And it would be easy to think holy is primarily about keeping the rules and obeying the law. But as the Old Testament continues to unfold, the people of God will discover that holiness is much, much, much deeper than outward obedience to God. It starts there because there's a need to learn practically what this looks like. As the story of the Hebrew people continues, they find that they are fundamentally unable to keep God's law. They don't have it within themselves to be holy. We'll find later that God has a plan for that. His plan is to work a deep change in His people on the inside, at the level of their hearts, at the level of their character. And they'll learn, and we'll learn, that holiness isn't just behavior modification. It's character transformation. And the kind of behavior that honors God flows out of a character that God Himself has transformed. This is what keeps holiness from being a strict legalism. It's not merely a matter of keeping the rules for the rule's sake. It's about becoming the kind of people who desire to be holy. It's about becoming the right kind of person so you can do the right kind of things.